Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. And like always, I have an amazing woman with me today that will share about how to, find your superpowers, the superhero in you. Nami Jagtiani, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Caroline.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, Nami, find your superpowers. That's such a big, I feel like when we're kids, we're all being asked, like, what's your superpower? Or what superpower would you like to have? Because it seems like it's always, how can I say that? In a etheric world, it's impossible to have superpowers. So why did you choose that term to focus on?
It's amazing. I'm actually really happy you brought up childhood because I feel like, well, the way that superheroes are depicted, their superpowers are often very supernatural. And so when you think about when you get asked that question as a child, you may be thinking, oh, like, do I want to fly? Do I want to be able to read minds? Do I want to, be able to be the strongest person and knock through walls and all the ways that it's depicted? And so that's the answer that we often give. It's not necessarily that it's whatever special, unique gift and ability you have, because that's actually what is being depicted. It's like something very special and innate to you. And I believe that we're all actually born with those gifts and abilities. And we just have to tap into it and find and hone in on like what makes us special and how we can use that for the world. And especially in childhood, even though we may get asked like, oh, what's your superpower? Like what superpower do you wish you would have had? We also, on the flip side, get told, conform to this, do it this way, do it that way. And I can go on and on about it, about like how I actually uncovered that this is, maybe we're going about it a little bit. We could be going about it in a different way. It's not necessarily wrong, but maybe there's something else that we could be doing from a young age. And because many of us haven't been taught to really boost our strengths and hone in on what sets us apart from others, I tend to talk more to like adults and middle-aged women.
Yeah. So, and it's so funny because I'm listening to you now, and funny is not the word. I will find another one, but how we mess up the kids because you're totally right. We're telling them like, you're special, be special. Yes, you could have your own superpowers, and then we put them in a box.
Yeah.
And we're like, you need to fit in there, and you need, these are all the society rules, and these are all the guides, and that's how you need to look. And we don't say that to our kids, but that's what we portray as a society.
Yes.
What's beauty versus this, what's smart versus not smart, what's successful. So it's just so ironic I guess is the word. And then when you're in your 40s, well, you're messed up and you need to go back.
Yes, unlearn everything you've been taught.
And reprogram. So it makes me hopeful because I feel like the future generations, and I'm even looking at my kids, they have like 10 steps ahead of us because we start talking to them about that like younger. But really, let's dive into like everyone has something special, because we're told that too. Like, even though I was put in a box, I was also told I was special and unique. And I was just like, okay, how?
Which one is it?
But it's true what you're saying. So just elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So I have 3 kids. And so I can use them as an example and something that I've learned along the way and something that has actually uncovered for me where you can almost trace back to what really makes you special. it's the thing you really, really love to do. And you probably love to do it when you were a child. So interestingly, I used to sit under a chair and I used to put a blanket. I would pick two chairs, one right next to the other, and I would put a blanket under it. And I would get all my small dolls and I would line them up and I would act like I was teaching them. And I would do it for hours. I mean, I could have done it for hours and hours and hours. And then as I grew older, I used to love having all my friends come over and lining them up and sharing something with them. And then I went and in high school, I remember after band rehearsal, I would have everyone around me and I would sit there and I would just write quotes down, like wisdom quotes, like anybody, Aristotle, Helen Keller, all the greats, Eleanor Roosevelt, and I would just write these quotes down and I would sit them and I would read and talk about this with the people around me. Now, interestingly, I didn't go on that path at all once I left high school because I was supposed to be a doctor. And it had nothing to do with what teaching or philosophy or understanding or compassion or wisdom or service, which was really where my passion was. That's what I used to volunteer like crazy in my free time. And I loved it, but I didn't do anything with it. And so now in my 40s, I realize that that is actually where my special gift is. My special gift and interest lies in this. It's like teaching wisdom. And so I now have come full circle, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. So going back to my kids, for example, my oldest kid since a very young age has just loved technology and transportation. And he's always been like very, very obsessed with it almost, like exponentially more than other children. Now, here's an example. He spends a lot of time on electronics, which doesn't normally, that actually is something that, we try to restrict, we try to limit, we try to set times on. However, that is his gift because he actually is exploring new ways to do things. Like he's looking at how new technology comes out, what is a better way of getting things done, how to be more efficient. And he's going to be 12 years old, but he's light years ahead of others because what I noticed that about him, I said, go harder. I don't want to restrict you because I see that you're learning from it and you're doing other things. In fact, how can we provide more resources and training to you? He's been coding since he was 8 because that is what your gift is. Mm-hmm. Now, completely different. Our middle child is one who actually just loves to go around like talking and singing and all this. And we thought, oh my gosh, it's really funny. He almost looks like he's trying to act. And another thing, like we said, okay, if this is something you're interested in, let's just go harder on it. So, and then my youngest, because I feel like I don't want to leave anybody out, is really creative. And so we, foster the artistic talent, and only in the sense of whatever their gifts are, we want to make sure that we're fostering it so that they can eventually give those gifts back. Now, in other parts of society, these kids would be taught, you have to do the same thing. You have these restrictions. You have to, focus on your studies, do this, do that, like in a very, like very in the box. And it's just, a little different way of approaching them from a young age of like, what do you really, really love to do? And let's just go in on it because that might be your gift and maybe not. That's okay too.
Yes. And you know what? The interests change too as they go through different phases, but it's just following as well their interest, which, thinking about, well, there's two things I want to say here. I'm so happy for you that you found that out before, messing up your kids. And not that we're messing up our kids, but no. I was as a rebel as I was, I thought, well, my kids need to really, I wanted them to have the best life. So I did put them in the box. And like today, now that they're adults and they're saying stuff, they're like, well, remember when I wanted to do that and you said no? And I was just like, remembering in the moment when I said no or why I said no, that it was for their best. I didn't want them to get laughed at because they had crazy ideas. I didn't want them to feel rejection, or I didn't want them to be different than the others and get bullied. Like there's so many different justifications that I was putting in my mind, and I kind of shut some of their passion out, which thankfully they realized it before 40, and now they're like, okay, I'm going to do it my way. But it also scares me when you say that, you know, your passion when you were little was to line up your dolls. Because for me, my passion was to be a secretary. It was really like to file things in files. And now that I'm older, I'm like, what does that mean? Because I've been a secretary and I have nothing against that, but you know, it's not my life goal either. And I'm trying to go back to that and find like, what was my passion? Because I could do it for hours.
Yeah.
I would sit in my room. I would put super boring music because that's the music they have in offices. And then I would just, you know, do papers all day.
You know,
So anyway,
I think I might know, because when I walk, so I do a lot of training as well as coaching. And so I will do some webinars. And one of the webinars that I often start with some type of exercise, and it's to create space between your thoughts. So I won't necessarily say meditation, because meditation really is creating the space between your thoughts so that you can hear your true self and that calmness and all that. And so another part of this is, yes, you can absolutely find your passions. Also, when you were young, likely you were doing something that did allow you to create space between your thoughts. And so what happens is when we get older, we're trying to all sit in quiet with some music on. And interesting that you said boring music. So we try to sit and, you know, put some type of music on or listen to somebody guiding us. And we believe that the only way that we can create space between our thoughts is to like close our eyes and follow what the guidance is. However, likely it was something that you used to do when you were younger. And so for some people, it may have been painting for hours. So that could be a passion. And it also could be a way to create space between your thoughts. So what I do is like with some clients I have, or at the beginning of that meditation, I'll say, remember what you used to do that you used to really, really love to do, and for some reason it brought you peace. And that is likely what you may want to tap into to create space between your thoughts now in this age.
well,
and so
it's kind of
maybe for you, it was the act of it triggered it because you said, I used to put on this boring music and I used to do this for hours. But I wonder if for you, that's what created peace, calmness, as well as you were able to just like have something going on that was creating some space between your thoughts.
It actually is the first time I tell that story and someone gives me an answer that makes sense. Besides, well, maybe you wanted to be a secretary.
No.
Because I tried it and that's not where my passion was.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, because to this day, when I need to think or if I need to calm down or whatever, I'll organize stuff.
There you
I'll
go.
organize my papers. I'll clean my house. But cleaning for me and organizing is like
Therapeutic, probably.
therapeutic. Literally. I actually, you know, I'm not one of the ones like pesting about cleaning. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every single day, and I still don't like that no one is cleaning up in my house, but it's still therapeutic for me, which is thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
So
you've been sitting here trying to figure out like, what's that my passion? No, that's actually your therapy.
yeah, well, because to this day I love paper.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone is turning to devices. Me, I'm like, I still need my paper. That's just books and everything. I still need paper. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna stay into that.
And that's actually also very telling, because likely you like touch. So for you, another way of probably creating space is probably to touch things or something somatic with your fingers or grounding, if I had to guess based on what you just said.
That's so interesting. Yes, I am. So let's go. It's the psychoanalysis of Carolyn. No, just joking here.
Little did you know this podcast would be doing that.
Let's move away from me. But let's go back to people that you see in general. So what's your target market? And I'm not going to say like just the only people you see, but who comes to visit you the most and why?
Yes, that's a great question. I often tend to attract women who are between like 35 and 55 who likely feel a bit lost. And so, well, the biggest way that I can tell if I'm a good fit for somebody is if I ask the question, who are you? Like, who are you really? Not who are you, wife, mother, sister, I work for this, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a, secretary, anything, it's, who are you in your core? And that also often aligns with your gifts that you have. And if they cannot answer that question, I can guide them on the journey to uncover that answer. And along the way, they will uncover their superpowers and their gifts, because they're all very similar in nature. They're all going to overlap a little bit. And therein lies like their core being. And then what you do with your gifts is really unleashing your superhero, what you choose.
And that gives you your purpose, basically.
Yeah, you do.
So many people are looking for the deep purpose of why they're there. Because you will speak with some people and it's so clear. And I know that it took me years to, like, I was coaching people into setting goals, and I could set, business goals and all of that, I could set like easily, but my personal purpose was so hard. And I think that if you would have asked me 10 years ago, who are you? I would have frozen, because I would have been, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, but I could not find other title. Like, someone one day told me, like, no, forget you're a mom. I'm like, okay. And then I was getting panicky, because it was just like, well, because you go through a phase when you have kids that basically you feel like you're only a mom.
Yes.
Especially with 3 kids, and especially just with one, you are responsible for the life of someone else. So you start feeling like you're only a mom. And that's probably where a lot of women get lost, because 35 to 55 is pretty much the age that, if you do have kids, you will discover motherhood. So how do you guide them through that if the person does not have an answer for you?
So first we work on that part, just answering that, like the 3 to 5 characteristics that really define who you are. And a lot of that has to do with what the questions that we were just talking about in the beginning. Okay, let's go back. What inspires you? What do you like to do in your free time? What did you like to do? Go back as far as you need to what creates peace, what creates joy. And then we talk a lot about values, because the thing is that you can't be who you are without also aligning to your values. And so the reason that we have to ground in what your values are, and, you personally, not necessarily even just family values, but what is really important to you? Because once we are able to answer those questions, then it's an exercise of like, how can I show up as that person every day? So if I'm I'm a very compassionate person. So even when I have to make really tough decisions and go through really tough things in life, like I am currently, I still have to always ask myself, how do I show up with compassion? Or say somebody has some values that are like, okay, I want to be monetarily successful. That's okay. Like, this is one of my values, is I'm going to show that I'm a provider. And that means that this is who I am. I am a provider. Okay. And so, monetary success is really important to me. However, one of my values is honesty. So that means that I can, make money in certain ways, but it has to be done through integrity, because that's my values. So you can't have one without the other. You have to be rooted in your values. And so then it becomes like, how can I show up as that person every day? What do you need to be? What do you need to do to become who you are? And so rather than having a to-do list, it becomes a to-be list, which is one of our coaching tools, but really focusing on it from the point of like, how do you become who you are truly meant to be? What actions can you take every day to be that person?
And what happens when you realize, because I know some of these people, you start doing the work and you realize that you're in the total wrong work for you, but it's still that's what you're providing with.
Yes.
So some people will just stop everything and go back to ignoring, basically. And some others will come work with you. But like, what do people do at that point when you realize, like, I'm not aligned?
So you're asking somebody who did realize it. So that path that I went on, and I'm living it. So I feel like I can give you a partial answer because I don't even fully know. I'm not even on the other side yet. So I was somebody who was in every single wrong circumstance that you can imagine, with everything, with my career, with where I was living, with my relationship, with everything. And so I had to, what do I call it? I tell my own coach, I say that I was literally broken down and I feel like I am being rebuilt from scratch. And so, and I believe it's because I was so far off where I'm supposed to be, because I was constantly doing whatever made everyone else around me feel good, and whatever I was getting from the approval of others, rather than focusing on what was most important to me. And so I was in a career that was completely different than what I'm doing currently. And I was also in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in. And I also was living somewhere where I shouldn't have been. And I've just taken it on to rebuild. And it's hard. It's really, really difficult. Yet I go off of feeling peace. So as I continue on this difficult journey and this difficult road, because I have more peace than I used to on my inside, that's how I measure, like how actually I measure success through peace. And so even though if society were to gauge like, wow, like she used to be like this and now she's like this, and from their measures of maybe, income, status, relationship, this and that, like if you look at it from the outside and judge me, you may think, oh wow, she's like really far off from where she was so successful. However, because I measure it through peace, I feel like I'm the most successful I've ever been. And I know that the rest will come.
I don't know you that much, but I'm super proud of you because I have an idea of all the changes you've made. And you're right that you're the perfect example. Talk to us a little bit about when you say you were in the wrong relationship.
So I am getting divorced. And that was a relationship that I was in for 20 years. And it has been, without getting too much into the details, it was just misaligned. And that has allowed me to, along the way of uncovering who I truly am, I was able to actually uncover trauma that needed healing. And once I was, did the healing journey, then the misalignment became very, very apparent and needed to be taken care of. So that's even, so from I moved, I'm going through a divorce, and I've started a completely different career all at the same time because of this journey, because of uncovering who I'm supposed to be. Yet I look at it as actually an opportunity to help others. And that's actually why I do this. That's why I'm doing this podcast, because I'm here to share my story and empower others to not necessarily have to do that. Like it doesn't, just some small alignments, like doing more of your passion to fulfill yourself, or, having more proactive conversations about this is who I really am. How does that match together? Can we become more aligned in our relationship? Or at work, being able to bring more of your true self and boost your strength. Not everything requires a dramatic change. However, and that's what I really truly believe. I believe that if you catch it early enough, or if you work on it early enough, then you actually may not be in a situation where you have to completely transform many parts of your life like I am. And so that's why I serve so much. That's where I come from. I believe it's happening to me because I'm supposed to help.
Yeah, and one thing that I love that you said is that your measure to success is peace. And, mine too is that. Actually, mine has always been, well, no, I guess it was that, but I didn't know until I knew. But it's happiness and peace, which are so closely linked together. But sometimes you have everything that the society judges being successful, and yet you're in a unhappy marriage and, killing yourself at work.
Yeah.
I was there like 10 years ago, full burnout of work. Everyone thought I had the perfect life, perfect everything, until you crash. And then when you crash, people are like, oh, what? That happened to you? And, now it's like, I don't measure success about how much money do I make anymore. It's like, and it's funny enough, it comes.
It does.
I measure it with like, do I feel anxious today? Do I feel peaceful? Is it a happy day? Am I glad to be here? And
Yeah.
that is more meaningful because you end up like aligning yourself way better. And I'm not saying that it makes life perfect, but it surely helps to, guide you in the right way or where you're supposed to go. And so you were at a corporate job, you had a lot of success. What made you say, I'm leaving this?
Mhm.
Because you know what, first of all, leaving a marriage after 20 years, after how many years? It's always super difficult, especially when you have kids. You made that tough decision. And then you made the decision of like, okay, I'm leaving my job.
Yes.
Like, what went through your mind and what was the reactions around?
Yeah, it was interesting because that was the year that I set my intentions for the year, and one of them was honesty. And I remember so well having the conversation with my boss at the time, who was a lovely person. And he said, okay, so what I had done is I was actually coaching and training people at work. And he came to me and he said, will you go back to your old, position where you did all the rest of the rest of the jobs didn't have to do with coaching and training much. And I said, you know, honesty is my intention for this year. And I said, so I have to be honest with you. And I said, I can't not serve my purpose. And this is my passion and this is my purpose. And if I don't do it here, I'll do it elsewhere. And, but this is, and it was so, I mean, that's really, really wild. That's a wild story because I had a very lucrative executive position. And but the feeling that I felt after I said that, the the power that came from speaking my truth was more important than anything I had ever done, in terms of my career. And it's not easy, like that. Right after that, I started my own business, and it's not been easy at all. It's definitely, and I'm sure you can relate, it's definitely easier. It looks much, much, much easier than it actually is. Yet when you're living in alignment, that peace that we talked about that comes with it, it's worth it.
Absolutely, because there's no price to that.
Yeah.
And yes, you have bills to pay and you have food to put on the table, and so let's not recommend to people now that if you're not aligned, just quit.
No,
Move along.
please don't. In fact, if I had to give any advice, it would be don't do that. Actually, if you do have some passion that you're pursuing, see if you can do it outside of your, whatever you have to do in terms of your in terms of your 9 to 5 job. It unfortunately for me, I couldn't because of the family life. So I couldn't sacrifice coaching and doing all this outside of my 9 to 5, because then I would have actually been sacrificing family time. And
Mm.
so that was a little tough. That was getting tough because I tried that first. And then if you want to do it, there's definitely a more methodical way that you can ever do something like that, which is overlapping and making sure that you have your safety net in place and all of that. So I actually have a lot to share in terms of like, don't do it that way. There is something about, saying your, who you are and what your purpose and passion is, but it's another thing when you decide to make it your career.
Yeah, because right now it's easy for us to say like we admire you, you did it, but you don't want to wish upon anyone to go through,
No,
such a rough patch when there's different ways of doing it. But I do
exactly.
admire though that you've put that word. How many people set intentions every single year? And I'm not talking about the resolutions, just like
No,
it's
that's
very
different.
popular now, like what's going to be the one word that guides your year, and then people will choose one word, but during the year at some point they will adjust that word and be like, but do I really want this? Oh, does it apply for that situation?
Yes.
And you just stuck to your word, honesty.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
that's like,
did. I did. And there were quite a few consequences of it. However, and I believe it's serving its purpose. It's to help others. Like I said, like not everybody has to go through this roughness.
no, exactly. And after suffering the starting your business, because being an entrepreneur is not easy. Like, I remember being younger, being like, I'm going to be my own boss. It's not that easy. And it's not that fun. And it's just, it's a different way of doing things, but you have to be fit for that
You're
different.
absolutely right.
And now you're successful, and it's different. But yes, people, please don't do this at home. Just like in the warnings.
Disclaimer. There's
Yeah.
definitely ways that you can serve your passion or your purpose, and sometimes it's and by the way, purpose doesn't always have to be service either. Like, it just so happens that this is my purpose, but your purpose can be something as like, something family oriented, or it could be something very personal. Like, I really enjoy, my mom is like the most amazing creative person, and she creates these amazing meals and experiences for people. She has a job that has nothing related to what her real passion is, and her purpose, I would say, is she loves to serve others with like providing amazing home cooked meals for them. Like, if they have, every time somebody in her circle is sick, she's always there with some home cooked meal, and that has nothing to do with her job, but she is fulfilled because that is something that is very personal to her. Her passion is cooking, and she's found a way to, unleash her own superhero and be there for others when they're not able to do what they need to do for themselves. And that's how she's, giving her gifts to the world.
Yeah, and thank you for specifying that our purpose is not always aligned with our job.
No.
We wish we could all find a job that feeds our purpose, but sometimes our job is our job, and depending on how much focus and importance you're giving to your job, that's what will make you feel more or less fulfilled. It depends. Like, for me, being productive is important. So if I'm not in a space where I feel productive, then it does affect the rest of my things. But not everyone is like that. And, it's some people don't care about doing a job 9 to 5 because their life is outside of it. For me, it's really attached. It's very closely linked. So yeah, your purpose doesn't necessarily have to be your job. But so tell us a bit, like, once someone is coming to see you and you define the purpose and everything, then they go through a program with you.
So I like to help them first define who they are, what their values are, talk about how they can show up as that person. And then we'll talk a lot about tools and resources. So wherever there are, and I never share anything that I don't do or didn't learn on my journey. And things like starting to look at time as energy, and how to create more energy in your life, thereby more time in your life. Intention setting, we talked about it a little bit, but intention setting is a huge one. How to become more self-aware. What are the 4 archetypes of self-awareness? How do you become more self-aware? How do you navigate yourself through change? And so a lot of these are tools that you can yourself take away and then use them, like in your day-to-day life as you need. And it's bespoke. So it's whatever somebody is struggling with. Whatever they're struggling with is what I often will bring. So actually right now I'm doing some trauma coaching in addition to some leadership coaching, which is very different. However, and the tools are different as well. Like, we talk a lot about breathing. We talk about being present. We talk about being mindful, and how do we stay in the moment and things like that. Whereas when I'm focusing with my leaders, some of it is about how do we give and receive feedback? How do we lead with compassion? And so my coaching, I can span all of this because I was a leader in corporate America, and I also have I've done my own trauma healing. And so I think that, you attract who you're supposed to help. And so that's kind of my situation right now. However, it's all about the tools and resources.
And you have this thing called Mind Quotient.
Mind Quotient, that's correct.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So the Mind Quotient is a mission-driven organization, and it is designed to, we're establishing the 3rd quotient. And so the 3rd quotient, MQ, is mastery of your mind. And what it is it is standardizing the language around what I believe is the third quotient. So not IQ, not EQ, but your MQ. And MQ is all the inner work. So it came about because I was in the coach. I was actually becoming a certified coach at the time. And I saw all these amazing people in all different areas. So some are in wellness, some are in finances, some in, mindset, spirituality. And then we were studying, all the leaders in personal and professional development. And it was in the middle of the pandemic, actually. So the mind quotient was born in the middle of the pandemic. And everybody who was working on their inner self was thriving, not just surviving. And other people were just trying to get by and just trying to make it to the next day. And that's when I realized, I said, the most important thing is this third one, like the one that actually gets you through the tough times. And so what is it? And we should be using that language. And then I realized it's not standardized. And so that's when the mind quotient came to me. And it is really focused on like mental well-being and mental wellness. So standardizing the language around and bringing the accountability to oneself. So it is not complicated. It's once you become self-aware and you know how to manage yourself, you'll have a high MQ. And so I'm working with other activists and other leaders to standardize this language. And a lot of it will be similar in terms of like the tools and resources for every single human being so that they can, one, tap into their light and pull themselves out of the dark. And it's going to be for everyone, just so there's going to be children and individuals, families, corporations, and all over, so that it can be standardized at the same time across all the different cohorts.
I find that fascinating. Honestly, we need that. And I think that a lot of people will have a very low MQ at first.
Yeah.
And as society progresses, hopefully it's, I feel like we're giving more and more importance to that subject as we go, like mental health, mental awareness, to really care for your mind more than, I know that when I was young, who was talking about that? No one. And I'm not from the 30s either, it's not that long ago. So I'm happy to see that this is like people like you are working on really setting standards for that. So, because emotional intelligence didn't exist not too long ago either. It was only like the IQ, the typical IQ that existed. So hopefully MQ will become just as recognized. And I find it super important and fascinating that you're working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, Nami, Nami, where would people reach you at?
So the best way to find me is through my website or social media. And so my website is coach-nami.com and my social media is Coach Nami. All of them are just at Coach Nami. And that's the best way to reach.
Awesome. And I will put all of Nami's information with the podcast. So please reach out to her and let's support her new movement of MQ, and let's all get on board because it's super important. And contact Nami if you have any questions. You can contact me as well if you have any questions. It's info@simplycaroline.com. Thank you everyone for being with us this week. Nami, it was such a pleasure to get to know you and have you on. Thank you so and much. I wish you all the best. And I'll see everyone next week.
Thank you so much.